So this is probably a very unique problem that I've run into, but sometimes I try to search a very niche topic looking for help from some kind of expert, and the top result is me. Not great when you're looking for new information. It's a little scary when Google is considering me the top expert source. This happened recently trying to research a way to build my own glass blowing furnace for a modern system that I can run in my shop for glass blowing upcoming projects. Probably the worst part is that the top result is a video where I was exploring a primitive historical way to do it and did not succeed. I did a follow-up a little bit more recently where I flew to experts at the Corning Glass Museum to learn from them and got a much better and much fuller explanation of how glass was originally first made and worked using a wood-fired furnace. But that result is buried 22 videos later in the search results. So I wanted to dedicate this video as a better result for anyone trying to do the very specific situation I'm looking at, building a DIY glass blowing studio in our workshop without bankrupting yourself. And hopefully the top result will actually be a little bit more helpful, in at least this very specific topic. Looking for the perfect gift for a dad who loves beer and history? Check out this unique beer kit that I put together. They'll let you taste 4,000 years of the evolution of beer, starting from the recreation of the oldest beer recipe from ancient Sumeria and the progression and evolution beer went through for the next 4 millennia. From the addition of bittering herbs in the medieval era to the roasting malt and carbonation of the 1700s. To the mastery and refinement of lager yeast and pale malt only possible in the modern era. This kit allows you to go hands-on with all the necessary ingredients to brew each of these yourself. Each has an incredibly unique flavor and a stepping stone into the wide variety of beer we drink today. I put together these DIY brewing kits allow you to brew 1 gallon of each of these beers based on real recipes from ancient Mesopotamia, medieval Europe, and the industrial and modern ages. It's like a time machine, only tastier. Order now to get in time for Father's Day. Use the promo code Father's Day to get 11% off now until Father's Day. Order it by June 11th to get it in time. This year marks the 10th year since I first started exploring the world of glass and glass blowing. And in that time you might think that I'd be an expert, but I'd say I'm still pretty far from that. Mostly because I've explored it from rather unique angles. First, trying to figure out how to turn raw ingredients like sand into optically clear glass that you use for eyeglasses and camera lenses. Then looking to how to explore how it was first done historically using basically only clay and wood. In the end, glass blowing is expensive. I've tried to work with countless glass studios on my journey with mixed results, mainly because their equipment is very expensive to buy and to run. So facilitating my various experiments, which could potentially damage their equipment, was always at their own discretion and availability, often getting turned away. So the goal of this video is to attempt to build my own glass studio without going bankrupt, and allow me full access to any glass project I want to do in the future. And most important, a quick and cheap way to reach these required temperatures. I have a working ancient glass furnace in my backyard, but it requires a full day of stoking it with a ton of wood to barely reach a working temperature. Very expensive, and it's hard to coordinate, which makes it hard for me to advance my skills at actual glass blowing. To just go out and buy some of the equipment you need to start a glass studio, it's going to cost anywhere from 10 to hundreds of thousands of dollars just for the glory hole. Generally, you're gonna need a few different furnaces, lots of tools, all the fuel to run that. It gets very expensive. So in this video, my goal is to try and find a very economical way to get your foot in the door and start working in glass. My primary source for this video is going to be Glass Notes by Henry Hallam, who provides directions and extensive information on a wide variety of kilns and furnaces for glass blowing. For glass working, there are basically 3 furnaces that are needed. The first is the furnace that melts and holds the molten glass. The second is the so-called glory hole, where you reheat and actually shape your glass. This is the furnace where all the actual working is done. And lastly is the annealing chamber, where the glass is slowly cooled down so it doesn't shatter. My focus for this video is going to be the glory hole. But all right, let's get started. So to start things out, we need our main foundation that will hold everything together. For that, a metal barrel and metal to build our frames and doors out of. The barrel was surprisingly cheap and easy to find. I found one for $15 on Facebook Marketplace near me. First, needed to clean it out with whatever used to be inside, so I rinsed it and then burned it out. Next is the insulation. Glass Notes gives you 2 options, ceramic fiber or fire brick. Each has pros and cons. The main one is how quickly it heats up and how long it stays hot. Brick can retain heat longer, but takes longer to reach that temperature. I envision myself using this for shorter sessions, where it'll make more sense to reach temp quickly, so I opted to use ceramic fiber, which is also cheaper for the initial construction. Important is that the ceramic fiber is rated for at least 2300 degrees Fahrenheit. The best price I could find cost me $270 for all the fabric I need, and this will be our largest single expense. In the book, they recommend doing pleated folds to make a thicker insulation, and that you soak the fabric before you shape it. To save some space in the shop and the extra insulation that I was just a little bit short on, I ended up shortening the barrel just a few inches. While that dries out, let's move on to the metal frame. All right, so I picked up all the metal. It's about a couple $100 worth of material. So now it comes chopping up into all the right sizes, and we can start welding together the frame. Hopefully my welding skills have improved some, or at least will by the end of this. As it heats up, it's going to put a little bit of extra stress on all of the frame, potentially cause them to fail. That won't be fun if we have a burning barrel of fire collapsing when we start it up. Hopefully I can get some decent welds. I took one class on welding in high school, and that's been pretty much it for 20 years now. So hopefully all that knowledge comes back to me. But nevertheless, learning how to weld has been a goal I've had for a while, so this will be some good practice. After spending a day struggling to get everything to weld, I stood it up, only for it to all fall apart. Looking back, very hilarious. At that moment, all right, I'm done. Not so much. My primary issue was that my welder can technically be run on a regular wall outlet at 120 volts. But this metal is thick enough that it's going to be a pretty difficult task to get it to weld without a full 240 volts. So the simple solution was to rewire my garage so that I could use the full 240 volts with the welder. And once I did that, everything got so much easier. I'm definitely still not an expert welder, but I feel my skills drastically improved by the end. And besides, I have a grinder. So, as they say, grinder and paint make me the welder I ain't. The chances of all this collapsing into a burning catastrophe of fire have gone down significantly. When I'm deep into a hands-on project like this, I always like to throw on a good audiobook or podcast. I can plow through an entire series while I work, which is why having great noise-canceling earbuds like these from Raycon is key. These are Raycon's everyday earbuds, and they've been my daily go-to from the workshop to the backyard to just zoning out on the couch. They've got active noise cancellation, which helps block out distractions so I can focus, even with power tools running. And when I pop them out, the audio pauses automatically. Super convenient. The case is sleek, wirelessly charges, and fits right in my pocket. Raycon's latest model also has multi-point connectivity, so I can switch between my laptop and phone without missing a beat, and the 32-hour battery life means I barely have to think about charging. Seriously, for the price, nothing beats these. They stay in, they sound great, and they just work. Go to buyraycon.com/HTME to get 15% off Raycon's best-selling everyday earbuds. Click the link in the description below, or go to buyraycon.com/HTME. Once the frame is completed, I could move on to the doors. These are a series of stacking doors that allow you to control the opening of the glory hole, allowing you to only open it to the necessary size for your workpiece. Once the frames were done, I cast them with refractory cement. Altogether, I used nearly 3 bags of cement, coming in at an additional $245. Once dried, the doors can be welded to the frame. Now, let's wrap up the barrel. Exposed ceramic insulation is not ideal to leave untreated, so I coated everything with a rigidizer. I assumed, as the name implied, this would leave it as a hard fabric that would retain its shape inside the barrel. But it did not. Next, tried coating it with refractory cement, but found it just cracked and broke under its own weight. So lastly, I resorted to using a series of bolts and washers to hold the fiber to the barrel. Unfortunately, these were galvanized, so when it first fires, I'll need to make sure it's well ventilated so I don't risk poisoning myself when the zinc ends up burning off. Now for the torch. My plan was to reuse a torch I previously bought that has worked well for melting copper in my foundry. It uses a Venturi effect to draw in its own air supply, providing the propane-oxygen mix that it needs. While it worked well in my foundry, when used in the glory hole, it proved to not draw in enough oxygen, and the flame kept blowing out, especially when the doors were closed. I suspect my furnace is more airtight than my foundry was, limiting the amount of air it was able to pull in. Overcoming this, though, would mean sacrificing how insulated the furnace is, so I opted to build a new torch using a forced air blower, allowing me to better adjust how much air was going in. To build it, I used $43 of black pipe from a local hardware store and a $40 air blower. Once connected up, I got a much better result, and could better control all the elements to make an ideal torch at just the right temperature. Lastly is an optional step of adding what's called a heat retention ring. The ceramic fiber will lose heat quickly. This ring, right at the opening, allows the heat to be better retained when the doors are open. Ideally, I want to cast it straight into the barrel, so it fits snugly and doesn't come loose. I was able to build a makeshift barrier using some logs, cardboard, and tar paper. Worst case, I figured I could burn them all out if they didn't come out easily. Then I casted the ring and let it dry. Fortunately, I ended up being able to cut everything out without too much difficulty. Now to fire it up and see just how hot it gets. I've done a few test runs now, and I feel pretty confident with the build. It's actually working out pretty well, and I'm actually impressed with how well it can insulate. You can actually touch the back of the barrel when it's fully heated and everything, and you won't burn yourself, so I don't have to worry about burning stuff directly behind it or around it. Puts out a lot of heat, so it makes the room very hot. Fortunately, it's summer now, so we just have all the doors open, blowing all the exhaust out, but we'll definitely need a very good ventilation system to use this indoors. So far, I found it takes about 15 to 20 minutes to just get up to heat, and then after that, you're able to turn down the propane pressure and hold it at there. With the laser thermometer, I'm getting around 2,000 degrees. Ideally, you want this around 2,300. I don't really trust those thermometers up above at temperatures that high, so I kind of suspect we are reaching that temperature. It's not registering. It does consume a fair amount of propane, especially when you have it up all the way, but if you're able to lower it down after it's reached temperature, I think probably looking at maybe 20 pounds of propane in like a full working day. Not gonna be cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than I expected. So I'm still working on finding the best way to do the initial furnace melting, of getting a hot pot of glass to do my initial gather from. I tried out with the little electric metal melting furnaces, and those actually worked pretty good. Got melted, but the long cylinder shape made it really hard to get a good gather. So then I tried just heating a crucible straight in the glory hole, and that kind of a similar issue, hard to get a good gather. I kind of went back to some suggestions that I got from the Corning Museum, where they said that in a pinch, you can actually just buy porcelain bowls and use that as a crucible, because porcelain can withstand these high temperatures. So I bought some cheap porcelain bowls, gave that a shot. I wasn't sure at first if like the temperature would be too high, too fast directly in the glory hole. So I did a test run, and it seemed to work pretty good. I then made the mistake of adding cold glass powder to it, and that caused it to crack and spill everywhere. So next I tried the main kiln that I have, which I was gonna use for annealing, to melt that down. I think I definitely wanna get it a little bit hotter and probably hold at that for a lot longer, just to really soften it up and get it nice and liquidy. All of them were very viscous. It takes a while to get the glass hot enough, so I might have to look into building a little bit better setup for that, and that might be a follow-up for that. I think one thing worth mentioning is that you are kind of getting what you pay for. This thing came in at under $1,000. Most commercial ones that you can buy are tens of thousands of dollars, but they have the advantage of kind of more built-in safety features. So this guy, you don't want to just leave running. You want to be babysitting it, checking on it, making sure you aren't setting your place on fire. But for this, since it heats up in 15 minutes and you can directly start working in it, I think that works really nicely. So I was able to do a little bit of glass blowing. I think the liquid glass was still a little low temperature, so it's hard to get a good gather. In the glory hole itself, I felt I was able to use it basically like any other glass blowing studio glory hole that I've been able to use in the past. It felt very familiar and very consistent with my experience there. That I was even able to heat it up a bit more, actually blow some bubbles. Not very well, but I'm still very early on. And this is all kind of with the end goal we have this year, that we're hoping to get to a light bulb. With that, we're gonna need some glass. That'll be kind of the ultimate test to see if I'm able to master with this new equipment and get an actual glass bulb. So this is definitely for developing the skill and making glass objects for projects as we need it. But I do want to eventually return to the wood-fired one once I feel a lot more proficient in this, and give that one another shot and see if I have mastered it to that full extent. So the grand total for this was about $830. Includes everything for the torch, all the metal for the castable refractory cement for the doors and the retention ring, and then the ceramic fiber. Very affordable, I would say. And of course, that's considering the fact that I already have a welder and I was willing to do all of the manual labor myself. Took a fair amount of time. A very nice shortcut to getting a glass studio without bankrupting yourself. This is kind of the missing piece, I think, to our current workshop here. I've been able to build up kind of an everything workshop where I'm able to do ceramics and wood. I'm able to forge metal. I'm able to cast metal. And like the missing element for a while now has been glass. So with this addition to the studio, I'm hoping we can now start producing our own glass and using it more as an element in the different things we build. This year marks 10 years since I first started experimenting with glass. We're going to be doing a little bit of a marathon cut of my full journey from the very beginning, from one of my very first episodes, make a glass bottle, eyeglasses, microscope, camera lens. It was quite a journey. If you're curious why I did all these videos struggling to make my own glass, why it's actually kind of simple now to just use one of these kilns and make glass that's actually relatively clear. And the answer is that I'm not making glass. I am starting with glass. This is just pre-made glass, already ground up, makes it super easy to melt down, turns right into a liquid. Very different than starting from sand. Hopefully this video will come up in Google search results above my other less successful ones. And hopefully I can be a source of knowledge rather than a source of misinformation. So thanks for watching. Thank you to all my supporters on Patreon. Without you, this wouldn't be possible. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe and check out other content we have covering a wide variety of topics. Also, if you've enjoyed these series, consider supporting us on Patreon. We are largely a fan-funded channel and depend on the support of our viewers in order to keep our series going. Thanks for watching.